The sky above the ruined city of Elysian was a bruised shade of purple, streaked with the faint glow of dying stars. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burning metal and the faint hum of distant engines. Below, amidst the rubble and ash, a lone figure moved with purpose. Her name was Kayla Vera, and she was the last hope of her dying world. Kayla's people, the Illyrians, were on the brink of extinction. Their once thriving civilization had been reduced to a handful of survivors clinging to life in the shadow of the Krylos, a merciless alien race that had invaded their planet centuries ago. The Krylos were not conquerors, they were harvesters. They fed on the life force of other species, draining entire worlds until nothing remained but dust and silence. But Kayla had discovered a secret, a way to save her people. It was a desperate, dangerous plan, and it hinged on one thing: the blood of Krylos. The Krylos were nearly invincible, their bodies impervious to most weapons, and their minds resistant to manipulation. But Kayla had learned that their blood contained a unique energy, a power that could be harnessed to reverse the damage they had inflicted. A single drop of Krylos blood, properly refined, could restore life to a barren field, heal a dying body, or even reignite a dead star. It was the ultimate paradox. The very thing that had destroyed her world could also save it. The problem was getting it. Kayla crouched behind a shattered wall, her breath shallow as she scanned the horizon. Her target was close. She could feel it. The Krylos scout had been spotted near the outskirts of the city, and she had tracked it here. It was alone, which was rare. Krylos rarely traveled in anything less than packs. But this one had strayed from its kind, and Kayla intended to take advantage of that. She adjusted the grip on her weapon, a modified plasma blade, one of the few weapons capable of piercing Krylos' armor. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She couldn't afford mistakes. Not now. The Krylos appeared suddenly, its massive form silhouetted against the dim light. It was taller than any Illyrian, its body encased in sleek, black armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. Its face was a featureless mask, save for the faint glow of its eyes, twin orbs of cold, blue light that scanned the ruins with mechanical precision. Kayla waited until it passed her hiding spot before she struck. She moved like a shadow, her blade slicing through the air with deadly accuracy. The Krylos reacted instantly, its arms snapping up to block the strike. The impact sent a shock wave through Kayla's body, but she didn't falter. She twisted her blade, aiming for the weak point in its armor, a small gap near its shoulder. The blade found its mark, and the Krylos let out a guttural roar. Its blood, a shimmering, silver liquid, spilled from the wound. Kayla's heart leapt. She had done it. She had drawn blood. But the Krylos wasn't finished. Its free hand shot out, grabbing Kayla by the throat and lifting her off the ground. She gasped, her vision blurring as the creature's grip tightened. Desperately, she swung her blade again, aiming for its arm. The blade bit deep, and the Krylos released her, its roar echoing through the ruins. Kayla hit the ground hard, but she didn't stop. She scrambled to her feet, her eyes locked on the Krylos. It was wounded, but far from defeated. She needed to end this now. With a cry, she charged, her blade flashing in the dim light. The Krylos met her head-on, its movements slower now, but no less deadly. They clashed again and again, each strike bringing Kayla closer to exhaustion. But she couldn't stop. She wouldn't. Finally, she saw her opening. The Krylos overreached, its wounded arm leaving its chest exposed. Kayla drove her blade into its heart, the plasma cutting through its armor like paper. The Krylos staggered, its glowing eyes dimming as it fell to its knees. For a moment, It seemed to look at her, its expression unreadable. Then it collapsed, its body dissolving into a pool of shimmering silver blood. Kayla dropped to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She had done it. She had killed a Krylos. But there was no time to celebrate. She pulled a small vial from her belt and carefully collected a drop of the creature's blood. It was all she needed. A single drop. The journey back to the Illyrian stronghold was a blur. Kayla's body ached, and her mind was numb with exhaustion. But she couldn't rest. Not yet. She had the blood, but the hardest part was still ahead. The Illyrian scientists had developed a device capable of refining the Krylos' blood, amplifying its power to a level that could save their world. But the process was dangerous. The energy contained in the blood was unstable, and one wrong move could destroy everything. Kayla handed the vial to the lead scientist, a frail man named Dr. Taryn. His hands trembled as he took it, his eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Kayla nodded. "We don't have a choice." Dr. Taryn hesitated for a moment, then turned to the device. It was a massive, intricate machine, its surface covered in glowing runes and pulsing lights. He inserted the vial into a slot at the center, and the machine hummed to life. The process began slowly, the blood swirling inside the machine as it was refined. Kayla watched, her heart pounding in her chest. She had risked everything for this moment. If it failed, the machine began to shake, its lights flickering wildly. Dr. Taryn's hands flew over the controls, his face pale with panic. "It's too much," he shouted. "The energy, it's going to overload." Kayla's eyes widened. "Shut it down. I can't. If I do, the energy will be released all at once. It'll destroy everything." Kayla's mind raced. There had to be a way to stabilize it. But how? Then it hit her. The machine was designed to amplify the blood's energy, but it needed a conduit, something to channel the power safely. And there was only one thing that could do that. Her. Without hesitation, Kayla stepped forward and placed her hand on the machine. The energy surged through her, a searing pain that felt like her very soul was being torn apart. She screamed, her body convulsing as the machine's lights flared brighter and brighter. "Kayla, no!" Dr. Taryn shouted, but it was too late. The energy reached its peak, and for a moment, everything went white. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the pain stopped. Kayla collapsed to the ground, her body trembling. The machine was silent, its lights dim. Dr. Taryn rushed to her side, his hands shaking as he checked her pulse. "Kayla, are you?" She opened her eyes, her vision blurred. "Did it work?" she whispered. Dr. Taryn looked at the machine, then at the readings on the screen. His eyes filled with tears. "Yes," he said, his voice choked with emotion. "It worked. The energy, it's stable. We can use it to heal the planet, to save our people." Kayla smiled weakly. "Good." But as she closed her eyes, she knew the truth. The energy had done more than stabilize. It had changed her. She could feel it, a strange, alien power coursing through her veins. The Krylos' blood had become a part of her, and with it came a terrible price. She had saved her world, but at a cost she couldn't yet comprehend. In the days that followed, the Illyrians began to rebuild. The energy from the Krylos' blood was used to heal the land, to restore life to their dying world. But Kayla could feel herself changing. Her body was stronger, her senses sharper, but there was something else, a darkness that lingered at the edges of her mind. She had become a conduit for the Krylos' energy, and it was slowly consuming her. She could feel their thoughts, their desires, creeping into her own. The line between herself and the Krylos was blurring, and she didn't know how much longer she could hold on. But she didn't regret it. She had saved her people, and that was all that mattered, even if it meant losing herself. As she stood on the edge of the city, watching the first rays of sunlight break through the clouds, Kayla smiled. Her world hung on a drop of his blood, and she had paid the price, and she would do it again.